Just a moment.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, good morning. The subcommittee will come to order, and I want to welcome the Secretary of Labor, Chavez DeRemer, and we welcome you to the subcommittee today, and particularly the Subcommittee on Labor, Health and Human Services, and Education for this hearing on the Department of Labor's fiscal year 2026 budget request. I want to congratulate you on your bipartisan confirmation as Secretary. And look forward to working with you, especially in this new role that you have started just a few months ago. Of course, the role of the Department of Labor is to promote, and develop the welfare of wage earners in the United States, to improve their working conditions, and to advance their opportunities for profitable employment. Unfortunately, under the previous administration, the agency was too often exceeded its statutory authority and attempted to implement a regulatory agenda that, had it not been rejected by the American public in the last year's elections, would have crippled American job creators and undermined the ability of the American workers to secure economic opportunities they need to support their families. Moreover, the department was more interested in catering to Beltway-based liberal social policy concerns rather than responding to the real needs of American workers, job seekers, and employers. These misguided, harmful regulatory proposals included an OSHA requirement that, if not found unconstitutional by the Supreme Court, would have required Americans to receive the COVID-19 vaccinations as a prerequisite for employment. Also, it would have included a wage and hour regulation that would have ended freelance and independent work opportunities, particularly important to workers with caregiving responsibilities who value flexibility. And also, a change to overtime regulations that would have reduced worker opportunity for career advancement. More than 417,000 businesses in Alabama employ over 47% of private sector workers in the state. Many of the small businesses in the district that I represent are family farms. No industry suffered more under the harmful regulation regime of the previous administration than the American farmer, because of an increase in the H-2A adverse effect wage rates. And so, Madam Secretary, I look forward to working with you and your agency, as well as USDA, to address this adverse effect wage rate issue and supporting this vital industry going forward. President Trump's election and your subsequent confirmation is a breath of fresh air, not only for the American worker, but also for the job creators. No longer will American businesses have to fear regulatory overreach or enforcement actions designed to punish employers and limit their success. Madam Secretary, while the Department's regulatory matters are frequently contentious, we have often been able to find bipartisan common ground on skills training. Apprenticeships produce positive outcomes for workers and job seekers, putting a priority on what should be the end goal of all workforce development programs, which is a job. These programs only exist where businesses choose to adopt this intensive approach to human capital management. We have seen support for these programs flourish under multiple administrations, and I hope that we will continue to build out these opportunities. The Alabama Office of Apprenticeship was in part created to respond to employer frustration with the Department of Labor's management of the Registered Apprenticeship Program. These frustrations included a bureaucratic and outdated one-size-fits-all approach to skills training with overly prescriptive requirements. Too often, under the previous administration, the Department of Labor showed favoritism in reviewing apprenticeship program applications, and in the name of equity and inclusion, would have turned a 2-page law into a 776-page rule that would have reduced opportunities for American workers of all race and both sexes. We should be ensuring that American workers and job seekers have direct access to career pathways that work for them and not adding 776 layers of Byzantine mazes to navigate. Apprenticeships represent an opportunity and a pathway to high-paying jobs. Unfortunately, the barriers to growth of this career training model will not be solved through funding alone. Improved program administration and more effective leadership at and by the department can better support the adoption of registered apprenticeships for workers for our nation's workforce. I'm hopeful that as we work through this shortened budget year, that we're able to once again find some common ground as we move forward. And I'm not only hopeful, but I feel like we will be able to do that. And I know that this subcommittee looks forward to hearing from your testimony today and asking questions about the budget and the policies that you are over at your department. But at this time, before you begin your opening remarks, I would like to yield to the ranking member, Rosa DeLauro, for her opening statement. Ms. DeLauro, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Chairman Allerholt, for holding this hearing, important hearing, on what I regard as, and I know this is, I want to start out with what I believe is President Trump's anti-worker budget request for the Department of Labor. Secretary Chavez DeRemer, thank you. Welcome, and I've said to you on the phone, it's great to see a House colleague here, and congratulations to you. Big job. And I would just say personally that I've always spent a lot of time, I've been on this committee, I think, full committee for 32 years, and the same amount of time on the subcommittee. And I've always believed that the Department of Labor, with regard to resources, has been shortchanged. So I'm not saying anything different than I have over the years to whatever administration there has been, but I particularly really regard the President's budget request for the Department of Labor as anti-worker. Let me start off by saying I don't take protections of American workers lightly. On Friday, I joined more than 3,000 striking machinists on the picket line at Pratt & Whitney's plants in East Hartford and Middletown, Connecticut, as they fight for fair wages and for job security. Unions built the middle class in this nation. They are the reason why we have a minimum wage, a weekend, overtime pay, and better working conditions. And I will always fight for trade unions in the Congress. I'm the daughter of a garment worker. My mother worked in the old sweatshops in the city of New Haven, sewing shirt collars and was piecework for pennies, where I visited. She had me meet her there every day after school. And I didn't realize the method of her madness until I was an adult. And that her admonition to me, and watching those women hunched over those sewing machines, not taking a lunch break. And in the needle trades, if you get the needle in your finger, you don't go and get a tetanus shot. You just pull away, you wrap it up, because if you get a drop of blood on the garment, you do not get paid for it. And my mother's admonition to me was get an education so that you don't have to do this. And so I've been an advocate for workers, for working people, for unions, and for better working conditions. The conditions she worked in were deplorable, and the American people earned and deserve far better. Our country's history is a story of desperately hard-fought progress for the rights of the American worker. And Madam Secretary, let me be clear, we will not go backwards. Not for Elon Musk and any other billionaires who want to pillage the middle class, continue extracting and hoarding extraordinary wealth, and not for the corporations lining up at the White House for special privileges and for tax breaks. To that end, I strongly oppose your proposal to cut the funding for the Department of Labor by $4.7 billion. I believe it's a 35% hatchet job to the crucial programs that help workers gain the skills to secure middle-class jobs, and to the agencies whose mission it is to protect the safety, health, and hard-fought rights of American workers. But before we talk about your request to really suffocate, I believe, your own department next year, I want to talk about what's happening right now. The American people are demanding help with the cost of living. President Trump is not laser focused on the cost of living crisis. He's actually making it worse. He promised to fight for workers, but instead he put Elon Musk and billionaires in charge of the government. Madam Secretary, this administration is recklessly and unlawfully freezing and stealing congressionally appropriated funds from agencies, programs, and services across the government that serve the American people. And the Congress holds the power of the purse. It is in the Constitution, Article 1, Section 9, Clause 7. President Trump, Elon Musk, and as you being secretary, you're attacking job training programs, labor protections, to pay for tax cuts for billionaires. Government should fight for the middle class, for working class, for the vulnerable, not for the interests of billionaires like Elon Musk. Already in fulfilling Musk's agenda rather than fighting for the needs of American workers, you canceled more than 24 women in apprenticeship and non-traditional occupations, the WANTO program. WANTO grants that support women in trades like construction, manufacturing, information technology. These are so many of the in-demand jobs today in communities nationwide, and yet women make up less than 25% of the workforce in those sectors. It's not serious. How can we take you seriously on economic issues that mattered most to American families when we are turning our back on the women in the workforce? One of your first actions as secretary was to cancel grants funded by the Bureau of International Labor Affairs, ILAB. That's around the world, demonstrating that we're not serious about trade partners and asking them to live up to their labor commitments to America so that we can protect the jobs for workers here in America when they undercut the standards that we have and they undercut the American worker. The recklessness sells out American workers by turning a blind eye to countries relying on exploitative labor conditions, including child labor and forced labor, to sell a high volume of low-cost goods here in the United States. By cutting these programs, you are waving a white flag to the countries that will steal American manufacturing jobs from us. What else could explain your decision to cancel countless grants that make sure Mexico fulfills the USMCA labor commitments, specifically grants to implement critical labor justice reforms and strengthen Mexico's enforcement of labor laws? If this is your plan to complement President Trump's reckless and rudderless trade policy, then American workers and manufacturers are in for a brutal awakening. At best, you do not understand your agency's responsibility to make sure American workers are not ripped off by our trade partners. At worst, there seems to be not a care if American workers lose manufacturing jobs to other countries with non-existent labor standards. Either way, I think that your tenure as Secretary of Labor has been hampering the American workforce, and I intend to hold you accountable. I want to work with you, but I'm going to hold you accountable on behalf of American workers. That is the role and the function of the Department of Labor. And under your leadership and the President's scheme to tax families and businesses even more, we are not on a path to restoring critical manufacturing jobs and boosting American productivity. We are on a path that will only lead to fewer jobs and higher costs to Americans. It is reported that you plan to fire 90% of staff at the Office of Federal Contract Compliance Program, leaving just 50 employees to conduct civil rights investigations, enforce equal employment opportunity law, rectify pay disparities for women, and protect the rights of some 3.6 million federal contractors. There are already reports that you have placed many of these staff on administrative leave. This is all happening today, right now. We're not talking about hypotheticals or what-ifs or worst-case scenarios. This destruction of support for workers has happened. It is happening today. Turning to your budget request for 2026, we're well into May with only a skinny budget, and the administration has provided almost no details about its proposal to cut the Department of Labor by $4.7 billion. That's a staggering cut of 35%. But we do know that the American workforce will bear the brunt of that cut. A central component of your plan is to eliminate WIOA, that's the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, WIOA adult and youth programs, and replace them with a block grant to states. but you propose to provide $1.6 billion less to train America's workforce. A block grant is a cut. You go to any state in this nation, you tell them it's a block, they know it's a cut, and we know it's a cut. States cannot afford to pick up the slack. Eliminating WIOA job training would deny job training and employment service for more than 300,000 adults who need help to find a good-paying job. Eliminating WIOA youth job training would rob 135,000 young people of employment opportunities. In fact, Chairman Adderholt and this subcommittee held a hearing in February on, quote, innovations from community colleges and the private sector, end quote. And one of his invited witnesses, Dennis Parker from Toyota USA, testified about the critical roles of WIOA resources in setting up and scaling the Alabama Federation of Advanced Manufacturing Education, the FAME program. He said, and I quote, strategic federal funding, such as resources allocated through WIOA, plays a crucial role in scaling workforce training programs like FAME. By allowing employer collaboratives to direct funds towards specific training needs, these resources help institutions acquire equipment, build facilities, hire instructors, critical elements for launching and sustaining high-quality programs, end quote. Madam Secretary, your proposed cuts would abandon employers like those in Alabama and all around the country, and job seekers looking for opportunities would suffer the consequences. You propose to eliminate Job Corps, where we know that there are more than 10,000 youngsters waiting to get in, as well as the Senior Community Service Employment Program, setting back our efforts to help low-income youth and seniors who are looking for work. So far, we have seen zero details, but the sheer magnitude of your cuts mean that you must be aiming to slash worker protection agencies by close to $1 billion. Will those cuts be to the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, jeopardizing the lives and safety of workers toiling in some of the nation's most hazardous conditions, like meat packing, poultry, and agriculture? And I told you about the conditions that my mother worked in. Or will you be cutting the wage and hour division, which makes sure that Americans get paid for the work they perform, ensures that children who should be in school are not instead being exploited in the fields or on the factory floor? Madam Secretary, I want to know how the Department of Labor will be able to form its function, protect the American workforce while under this hatchet. The American people deserve to know what will become of the programs and protections that so many workers throughout our nation's history fought and died for. I understand the administration is eager to find a way to pay for tax breaks for billionaires, but doing so by dismantling protections from workers, stealing from job seekers, throwing the middle class and our workers' livelihoods under the bus is indefensible. We are in the middle of a cost of living crisis. Yourself and Elon Musk and President Trump will be making it worse. Republicans in Congress could stop the mayhem, could stop the chaos and the destruction today if they had the courage. They remain silent, petrified of the president's scorn, his revenge, or his retaliation. Those of us in elected office, and we are blessed to serve, we have the moral responsibility to work on behalf and provide the services to the American people. We know what's right, and we know what's wrong, and we understand the harm that's being wrought on the American people. We need to stand up. We need not to be afraid, because this is the time to meet the moment. As a leading Democrat on the Appropriations Committee, I assure you we'll never stop fighting against this dangerous dismantling of the Department of Labor and its agencies, which is jeopardizing the paychecks of middle-class, working families and the vulnerable, and undermining the safety and the health of our workers. I thank you. I look forward to your testimony. And yes, I do look forward to working with you. I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We're glad to have you here, Madam Secretary, and we have received your statement. It will be included in the record, but certainly we now give your open remarks, and we look forward to hearing from you and as we follow up with questions. Thanks.
Chairman Adderholt, Ranking Member DeLauro, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for the invitation to testify today. It's an honor to appear before the subcommittee to share the important work the administration is doing at the Department of Labor. It's a privilege to serve as the 30th Secretary of Labor and to lead the department's efforts on behalf of President Trump and the American workforce. My role as Secretary is to ensure the American worker is at the center of the economic strategy. The middle class, union workers, and small businesses have given us a clear mandate. It is my job to guarantee those men and women are not just heard, but respected and prioritized at every level of government. From the moment I was sworn in on March 11th, I promised to put American workers first, and that mission has guided my work from the very beginning. Through common sense reforms, we will focus the Department of Labor on the same purpose, saving taxpayer resources while safeguarding protections that are critical to the health and well-being of our workforce, like enforcement efforts, inspectors, and investigators. Additionally, I'm committed to having an open-door policy with every worker. As their liaison and advocate, I am committed to painting an accurate picture of laborers' needs and concerns to the President. I launched my listening tour, America at Work, to hear directly from the men and women on the ground who are living this day in and day out. These insights and experiences are imperative to shaping federal labor policies and practices. I told my team when I began this tour that I want to visit all 50 states to better understand the regional workforce needs, and we're making good headway. I've held many meetings with local leaders to learn more ways that the federal government can help develop a skilled workforce, improve infrastructure to attract businesses and investment, prioritize workers, and identify smart regulations that expand economic opportunity and drive job growth. From a training facility demonstration with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers in Pennsylvania to a day spent with students learning to become aviation mechanics in Nevada, I am experiencing and relaying the challenges and triumphs of America at work. We have a responsibility to turn these stories into actions through smart reforms and federal solutions that deliver real results. This worker-centric approach is part of the broader economic momentum President Trump is driving. With more than $8 trillion in private investment so far, Americans are seeing great progress in the growth of our jobs, our economy, and our competitive edge. To further stimulate economic growth, the Trump administration is overhauling the waste, fraud, and abuse that has characterized the federal government's use of tax dollars for decades. The Department of Labor is eliminating unnecessary red tape that stifles innovation. We are on track to restore freedom and purchasing power to hardworking men and women. For example, the Department of Labor recently uncovered $4.4 billion of unspent and unusable COVID funding as an actively working to return that money to the Treasury in its entirety. When Americans' hard-earned tax dollars are wasted, more of their paychecks can go to things that actually matter: putting food on the table, gas in cars, and providing stability for our families. Workers are the cornerstone of our economic comeback, and that's exactly why America First policies matter. I stand ready to equip, train, and support our workforce so they can thrive in an ever-changing job market. Pursuant to 2 critical executive orders, my department is hard at work to collaborate with the Departments of Commerce and Education to unlock the potential of the American worker. We are looking to strengthen registered apprenticeships, modernize workforce development programs, and invest in opportunities that upskill to meet the current labor market demands. As part of the new White House Task Force on Artificial Intelligence Education, I am also excited to identify new avenues to prepare the American workforce for technological advances and challenges of the future. This task remains at the forefront of the President's artificial intelligence agenda. I'm confident that by revitalizing our workforce and preparing workers for the jobs of tomorrow, we are breathing life into the American dream. I believe, as you all do, that we must work together to foster the economy that ensures every American can thrive with good pay, safe working conditions, and a secure retirement. It is my honor to work on behalf of President Trump as we all bring back jobs to the United States and put the American worker first again. I look forward to working with Congress and each and every one of you on these important goals, and I look forward to our discussion here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Secretary, and we appreciate your opening statement, and we look forward to doing our round of questions, and all the members will have 5 minutes. I try to be a little bit lenient on the 5-minute rule because sometimes you're in the middle of a question or in the middle of an answer, and to finish that thought, but obviously to make sure that we have time for everybody, and there'll be members that'll be coming in and out. I do appreciate all the members when I start tapping to start wrapping up as we move forward. I'd like to start out by asking about the adverse effect wage rates. And as you well know, family farms are essential to the economy of all America, but in particular, I see it in the economy of the district I represent and in North Alabama. Unfortunately, under the previous administration, the H-2A labor rates required of agriculture employers became more and more unaffordable, and actually to the point that many family farms and specialty crop growers are at risk of being forced to close their farms. I know this is an issue that you are very familiar with, and because of that, I want you to commit to working with us and to ensure the family farms are able to maintain this operations. And so I would just ask you if you would be willing to do that as we move forward, and any comments that you'd like to make about that.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Absolutely. I want to work with each and every one of you to understand the complexities of really what's happening across the country as far as it relates to any of the H programs, but particularly H-2A. As a former member, I did serve on the H-2A subcommittee through agriculture, as I sat on that committee, to develop what is working and what's not. And the one-size-fits-all, as we know throughout Congress, isn't always the case. The department has already received almost 19,000 H-2A applications from the employers, which is a 9% increase in the workload that we're seeing. I know agriculture and this AWR, or the wage rate, is a real concern for our farmers, ranchers, and producers. But what I do have to mention, of course, as you know, that this is really subject to litigation, and it really precludes me. And I know that today most of you will ask a lot of questions that while they're in that reality and in that realm, I will not be able to comment on that. But what I will say is I am sensitive to the concerns that we heard from the Biden administration, and I am committed to working with you and Secretary Rollins to solve this issue, because it has been brought up by not only each and every one of you, but almost every member of Congress that is concerned with the rural parts of America and how we're going to fill that workforce. So I am committed to working with you.
Thank you. In my opening remarks, I referred to the apprenticeship programs, and given the challenges that many employers face in finding well-qualified workers, many are turning to apprenticeships to build their supply line of skilled workers as they are in their particular businesses. That the Alabama Office of Apprenticeship links talent with opportunity. Given how much I know you've heard about this important issue on your listening tour that you referred to, what can the Department of Labor do to support registered apprenticeship and all forms of work-based learning?
Yeah, I'm telling you, as we've been on this tour, I have visited over 8 states since I was sworn in, and we'll get to all 50 states before the end of the year. As was mentioned, there have been plenty of secretaries before me, despite whatever party, that they want to get around and understand the workforce, but it doesn't make any sense to me that we wouldn't do this on the front end, at the very beginning, to understand. But through the executive order of the president, 1 million apprentices is the goal for this country. We range between 680,000 to 700,000 at a time, so we have a ways to go. But I was just, see the investments, I was just in Ohio as well, and the Department of Labor is going to be focused on fulfilling that. And we know that every sector and every needs more, and it's not just in the traditional trades. We're seeing it across the board. So we will work with every industry to expand apprenticeship programs across the nation in order to fulfill the president's executive order for 1 million apprentices for that pipeline of the future workforce of America.
Thank you. And before my time expires, under the previous administration, uncertainty around the religious exemption for organizations that contract with federal government. The rule allowed religious organizations to operate according to their religious beliefs while participating as a federal contractor. Without this important rule in place, what steps will the Department of Labor take to ensure that religious organizations receive fair treatment and protection in the federal contracting process?
Yeah, thank you. On that, as the Office of OFCCP is, again, under litigation, I would like to work with your office to fulfill that answer for you when it's available.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Laurel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I was delighted, Madam Secretary, to hear you talk about a worker-centered department. as it should be, and that's also true of our trade agreements, need to be worker-centered as well. You promised, and I quote, to bring back jobs to the United States. But one of your first acts as secretary was canceling all projects funded by the Bureau of International Labor Affairs, ILAB, including the countless projects to make sure Mexico fulfills its labor commitments under the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Trade Agreement, which was done with President Trump, helped deal with negotiations with several others, but that was passed into law by the president. Cutting these grants amounts to waving a white flag to countries that will steal many American manufacturing jobs from us because it allows foreign companies to cheat, to undercut American jobs. They have lower wages, no labor standards, etc. You get it. You understand that. American workers are counting on you to monitor and enforce USMCA labor commitments so that they do not lose the places to places with weaker labor standards and institutions. But you and Elon Musk's Doge account characterize these grants as, quote, America last, end quote. Now, my question is, I'm going to read some of the USMCA projects you canceled. Tell me how they are America last from your perspective. Strengthening government labor law enforcement in Mexico.
You want me to answer individually as you go? Well, thank you again, and I know, and I appreciate the passion that you have for 30 years that you're serving. I have the exact same passion in just the short amount of time because of my years of experience, so I look forward to working with you on all these issues. Our goal is to restore accountability and through ILAB and focus the taxpayer dollars for the American worker and business, and that has been my focus from the beginning. For one of their instances, working with USTR, Jameson Greer, in order to address the issues in Mexico. We will be working that together because we're on the same subcommittee together, ranking member, and we will be focused on that.
I mean to interrupt, but I'm just
No, no problem.
These projects have been canceled. Strengthening government labor law in Mexico, a government of Mexico approach to combating child labor, engaging Mexico's auto sector employers in labor law reform implementation. These projects have been canceled. So how do we then deal with maintaining what ILAB does or did is making sure that American workers are not left behind, which is, it looks to me like that's where you are going with this. And I'll ask you about Ambassador Greer. Did he or anyone else dealing with trade, was he consulted? Was he involved in the discussions before these programs were canceled?
Well, a couple of things. One that I want to comment on. You couldn't be more incorrect in saying that I don't care about child labor or I don't care about what happens with these agreements. Number two.
But why then cancel the program?
But number two, I do have to recommend and say to you all that because these are subject to litigation, I really can't talk about the specific grants. I know you know that. And it's no disrespect. I just want you to know.
And I have no disrespect as well.
No frustration that I have.
If we're
as a
committed
former
to
congressman,
dealing
I wish
with
I could share with you
forced
if they weren't
labor,
subject to litigation.
child labor, labor reform, all that benefits American workers, doesn't put them at a disadvantage, is being scuttled, is done, and we can get no answer as to why that's the case. So my view is that mission is gone. We're not going to be there to protect American workers. Let
We
me
will
move to
protect
another.
American workers.
Let me
That
move,
is my first and
let
foremost
me-
focus.
Yes, well, here, but you can have a focus, but your actions have got to tie in with your focus. If your actions are contrary to your focus, then you're not meeting the mission. Okay, let me talk about National Apprenticeships Day this year. You stated that you, quote, will personally ensure that the Labor Department is helping to fulfill our bold goal of exceeding 1 million active apprentices. I'm for that. Registered apprenticeship programs work. They're the best. However, last week, you celebrated with Elon Musk's Doge account as you canceled more than 24 Women in the Apprenticeship and Non-Traditional Occupations grants, WANTO, which is administered by the Women's Bureau, and it supports women in trades like construction and manufacturing, including a grant to North Carolina nonprofit that works with local builders, trains women to enter the construction fields in Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill, a grant to a Biloxi, Mississippi nonprofit that trains women for construction jobs. You are decimating the Women's Bureau and WANTO grants that help women gain vital skills and better paying jobs. Madam Secretary, women make up less than 25% of the workforce in these trades. Why should we believe that your promises on active apprenticeships when you and Elon Musk are canceling the grants designed to help women fill in-demand jobs in communities nationwide.
Well, thank you. And you should believe me because I am a woman and I am in the workforce. And I do care about all American workers. And we will be focused on those in the Labor Department as well. And statutorily, the Women's Bureau is in statute.
Yes, it is.
We will work hard to focus on all American workers. And I cannot say more than that on that grant cuts because it is subject to litigation.
Well, I would just
So
say
thank you.
this. If we're going to help women become more than 25% of the folks in those in-demand jobs, then the programs that Elon Musk and yourself and the president are terminating, then that does not meet the goal. So aside from litigation, it is not going to work to help women in the workforce. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Madam Secretary.
Good morning.
It's a pleasure to see you today and wish you congratulations for stepping up in this role, and really so appreciate your leadership, your dedication, and I think almost most importantly, your positive attitude that you bring to this job. So thank you profusely for that. We look forward to working with you. Appreciated the phone call the other day. Thank you so much. As you know, it is very important to me to maintain the integrity of the independent contractor relationship. In my state, the great state of Tennessee, we value this on both sides, and it has worked so well. And I know earlier this month, the department's Wage and Hour Division issued an announcement that is currently working to reformulate the test as to how independent contractor status is determined under the Fair Labor Standards Act. And I just wanted to ask you how we can be helpful in that process, and just thank you for your commitment to maintaining that.
Yeah, so subject to again, as we do the rulemaking and litigation, I can't comment specifically, but we did issue through the Wage and Hour Division the Field Assistance Bulletin so that there is some certainty for the workforce and how to navigate this until the Department of Labor continues down the road of that. So what I ask is, it is about not only working with members of Congress on both sides of the aisle to understand what this means in your respective states, and you are sharing with me on how important this is to Tennessee. But again, technical assistance back and forth and how we work together is going to really round out how we're going to move forward in the future on this. But more flexibility and modernization is what the workforce is asking for. And we want to grow the workforce at all costs, so we're going to do everything we can to assist you in that.
Thank you so much. Madam Secretary, question about Jobs Corp. These are skilled trades people, a lot of young Americans who are waiting to engage in that program. It's my understanding that currently that may be on hold, and I would just like to know when we might expect some type of resuming of that enrollment in Jobs Corp.
No, thank you for bringing that up. Again, there are so many Job Corps centers throughout this country that have dedicated time, but there has been a report that we have released from the Department of Labor most recently in relation to all of these centers, the Job Corps Transparency Report, and I highly encourage all members of Congress, if you have a Job Corps center, to take a look at this, and it is publicly available. The Job Corps program has a price tag of nearly, $1.7 billion per year, and we owe it to the taxpayers to be transparent about what is happening. So the average cost per student is about $80,000, and the average cost per enrollee, regardless of their length of stay, is about $50,000. So there have been some concerns with that, and we see for the signaling from the president's budget that we want to take a refocus and a relook on, are we really focused on where those dollars are going to have the outcome for the workforce? This is a population that we also deeply care about. As a member of Congress, I was a Job Corps champion. From what I have discovered through this process, I do want to work with each and every one of you in understanding how we move forward to train this population, especially the 16 and 17-year-olds that we have. We need everybody in the workforce. And so we have no final decision. We'll keep looking as we do more of this reporting, but I highly encourage, I would like to work with each and every one of you individually on this. This is an important issue.
And I thank you for your response. And I will close by saying this, Madam Secretary, so appreciate the fact that you want to visit all the great 50 states.
Including Tennessee.
Including the great volunteer states. So I welcome you to our state. Our state is one of those states where we cherish our employers, our employees, our independent contractor relationships. We are booming in the great state of Tennessee. People are coming all across our great state. So I do welcome you there and wish you continued success. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'll yield back.
Thank you, Congressman.
Mr. Hoyer.
Thank you very much. Let's try to do a speed round here.
Okay, uh-oh, here we
Because you and
go.
I went over these on the phone. I'm going to ask the questions I asked you on the phone. Hopefully, we have the answers already.
I'm not going to make any promises just yet, but we're going to work together daily.
Okay.
I miss you on the 7th floor, by the way.
Well, we miss you. Every time I get in the elevator, I say, "Where are you?"
Where are you? That's where we spent most of our time, in the elevator.
Okay, let's go quick. What are the changes to FTEs from January to now in Department of Labor?
I'm sorry, I missed it.
What are the changes in FTEs from January to today?
Yeah, due to litigation, I can't comment on that right now. Because there's been a stop on the DRO about any of what's happening in HR. So due to litigation, I can't
Is this
give you
part
that
of
number.
the transparency and accountability program that the president talks so much about?
Well, I promise you, I promise you, Congressman,
Number is in litigation?
well, as through.
Whether you legally did what you could do, whether DOJ is legally done, that is in litigation. I didn't ask you that question. I said, what's the number now? I can't believe that's in litigation.
Well, with the deferred resignations that have happened, I don't have a final number of FTEs currently at the Department of Labor as of now. I do not have that final number, but I will get it to you just as soon as we have the final number.
Okay, now I asked you these questions on the phone.
Yep.
How many workers took the original buyout?
Yeah, exactly. I don't have the exact number because they haven't all signed. It was offered to a lot through the Department of Labor, and I don't have the final number for you. But I promise you, I will get it to you as soon as I have the final number, because not all have decided if that's what they want to do or not.
So
And
you-
I will have my office brief you on it
Well,
specifically.
one of the things I want to know, if you have to find this out later,
Sure.
and I asked you on the phone, how many are still being paid but not working?
Yeah, everybody who had chosen to be in the program, it was through the administration, will be paid through, I think it's September 30th. I don't know if that's right, September 30th, yes. That's correct, September 30th, those who chose to do the program.
That's very interesting. Those who chose, I don't know how many chose.
I don't have the final number either. I really don't have the final, I'm not making it up. I don't have the final number. It was offered, not all have signed back, and I don't have the final number.
No, I didn't ask you how many were offered. How many signed up and are not working but being paid every day to do work for the
I
American
don't have that
people?
final number, but I will get it to this entire committee.
Well, I'm glad you'll do that, but I'm surprised because we had this phone call a week ago.
But it changes, so I just don't have it, but when I do, I will get it for you.
Well,
Because people have an opportunity to take it as they go along.
Madam Secretary,
Yes, sir.
with all due respect,
Yes, sir.
we had a delightful phone call.
Yes, and
I
we
gave you the
continue.
exact questions I was going to ask you. No tricks.
I'm not tricking you.
No, you're not answering me either. How many employees were let go but asked to come back?
I do not have that number for you today.
We went over these a week ago.
Yes.
There's no point in having a conversation if we all know our time is short. If you don't ask your staff to give you these answers, this is not an opaque question.
Yeah.
This is a question of how many people are now working in the
Congressman,
Department
I
of Labor.
will get you that number when we have the final numbers in place.
I don't want the
have-
final number. I want now. And that's what I asked about, now. I know you can't give me the final number because it's going to be a moving number.
Yes, so may I answer this for you, that from my legal team? 45 days to confirm, about 15,000 DOL employees, and no one was fired and has come back.
No one was asked to come back?
There you go. Correct. 15,000 there you go. There, no, that's how many at the Department of Labor.
How many are gone?
And we'll have 45 days from the time that they take to confirm those, and then I will give you those answers. Yeah, listen, you know me, Congressman, I'm not here to play games either. I take this very seriously, and I want to protect the American worker as it's subject to litigation, as we've gone through either the DRPs or the reduction in force. I can't comment any further than that, but I will get you the information just as soon as I can.
to your knowledge, was there any study made for DOJ or the Department of Labor that justified the removal of those who have been removed or asked to resign?
Yeah, you had asked me that and I can answer this. I don't know of any study that was done.
My premise is that they knew how to do it, they didn't know the consequences. We're going to find out. Let me close with this, a quote. We want the bureaucrats to be traumatically affected. When they wake up in the morning, we want them not to want to go to work because they are increasingly viewed as the villains. We want to put them in trauma. Are you familiar with that quote?
No.
That's Russell Vogt. You have just talked about how we all want to be for labor, for workers.
I absolutely
What
do.
do you think that does to your workers at Department of Labor and throughout the federal government to talk about them that way?
Well, I'm not familiar with that quote, but I can promise you this. I am for, and every focus that I do every single day when I wake up is to focus on the American worker, and I will continue to do so.
Thank you very much. I look forward to the numbers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Clyde.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Madam Secretary. Thank you for the phone call.
Of course.
I appreciated being able to chat with you and the questions that I raised and the answers that you gave me. And so I'm encouraged to hear your commitment to restoring constitutional boundaries and returning power to the states, localities, and most importantly, the American worker. Today, we face a critical shortage of skilled labor in trades, manufacturing, energy, and other key industries where, while millions are burdened with student debt and degrees that really haven't led to better jobs. You know, it's clearly time to rethink the federal workforce investment. Taxpayer dollars should fund results, not rhetoric. And that means cutting ineffective programs and tying funding to clear outcomes like job placement, earnings, and employer partnerships. It also means empowering the private sector. Employer-driven models with on-the-job training and real-world experience frequently outperform bloated federal programs. For too long, the federal labor policy has been shaped by sprawling one-size-fits-all programs. I think you mentioned that in your statement. With regard to political allies, and it prioritizes DEI checklists over merit and funds nonprofits that have little to do with advancing real workforce development. I'm grateful that the Trump administration is reversing course, eliminating waste, and focusing on results. I'm especially encouraged by your support for apprenticeships and skilled trades, practical, debt-free paths to success. Federal policy must reflect that college isn't the only way up. You know, trade schools are phenomenal, and they have incredible graduation rates and job placement rates upon graduation. So I also share your concerns about Job Corps and the Senior Community Service Employment Program. You know, these programs have been costly, ineffective, and in some cases unsafe. And the data is clear. You mentioned a study that y'all had done, and they're failing those they're meant to serve. So I thank you, and I thank President Trump for eliminating the Job Corps in the budget request. Finally, I want to highlight your strong stand against rewarding illegal migration with unemployment benefits. It's unacceptable that American taxpayers are expected to subsidize policies that erode our national sovereignty and displace lawful workers. Your warning to governors on this front was well placed and necessary. Thank you. So, Madam Secretary, your recent warning to governors that states allowing illegal aliens to access unemployment benefits could lose federal funding. Can you provide an update on how you're enforcing that policy and what mechanisms are in place to stop the misuse of these benefits at the state level?
No, thank you so much. This is such an important issue for the unemployment insurance trust fund to be whole for the people who need it most. And I think that's the biggest concern. And so my recommendation was for those governors to comply with not allowing anybody who's of any illegal status to have unemployment insurance. And as we receive feedback, we will continue to discover what those dollars are and return them to the state treasury, because we've already uncovered and we have some returned already to the state treasury, but we need to follow up with that. I know Congress has approved through the House an extension on that unemployment insurance recovery, and we're looking forward to working with Congress and the Senate to continue that, because those are dollars that have been taken and not returned, and then we'll continue to follow up. And then as it extends to illegal immigration, we will continue to work with every governor to be a good federal partner, to have them understand that is not what the Unemployment Insurance Trust is for. It is for the American people who need it most.
Thank you. Thank you for that commitment. Now, our chairman asked about the adverse effective wage rate, and I want to follow up on that. And it's making it increasingly difficult for farmers in my district, I have a very agricultural district, to hire legal guest labor under the H-2A program. So I know you mentioned that there's litigation going on, but what is your department doing to address the unsustainable wage inflation under the AEWR? And will you support a freeze at the January 2023 levels or lower to protect American agriculture and food security?
Well, thank you for the question, and because it is in litigation, I really can't comment any further, but I will continue to work with your office and any other office who, this is very important, and I will also work with Secretary Rollins on this issue as it's important. As it reverts back to all of the H programs, though, as well, one of the things that the Department of Labor is doing is talking about accessibility and understanding the program in itself, and oftentimes the mitigation process or the navigation of the system. So streamlining those processes are working as well. So as a culmination of all of those together, I think we're going to have better outcomes for all the H programs, and then as well as it resorts to the AWR issues. But until it's out of litigation, I won't be able to comment specifically.
All right, well, I look forward to working with you on that. And one last final question. Job Corps has been plagued with violence, waste, and poor outcomes for years. And Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask unanimous consent for this article to be entered into the record. It's by Fox News. It says, new report exposes how government program with eye-popping budget, $1.7 billion, is failing vulnerable students, and it's April 25th, 2025. So I ask that it be entered into the record. All right, and so I just want to thank you for your bold action on Job Corps.
Thank you.
And is there any comment that you would like to make further about Job Corps and the decision by the
If
president?
anybody needs any more assistance with their specific Job Corps numbers, I would like to offer that that is a public document.
Right.
But if there's anything else that I can get for you, please, I really want to work with each and every one of you on this issue, because that population is one that needs to be served, and how we do it more efficiently and effectively and keep our students safe and our workers safe is going to be a primary goal of the Department of Labor.
Thank you very
Mr.
much, Mr.
Spokane.
Secretary. And I yield back.
Mr. Spokane.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Madam Secretary, for being with us. Sorry.
Thank you.
I'm almost out of breath a little bit. I was running between.
Back and
because
forth.
They're like, Clyde's halfway through. So I'm trying to get here in time to
Thank you,
make sure we
Congressman.
kept it going. Glad to see you in the position because we do appreciate, you had many pro-worker votes when you were in Congress, and that provides me some comfort knowing you're there. However, the president's budget does provide me some anxiety when I see a $1 billion cut and there's no real details in the skinny budget. Specifically, I guess the two questions I'd love to have some reassurances from you around OSHA and the wage and hour division on cuts, because I think those are two of the divisions, as you well know, support workers the most. And I want to make sure that, because we don't have the details, that you can maybe give us a little insight on what you might see happening in those two areas.
Yeah, thank you again for the question. And certainly, one, to fulfill the mission of the Department of Labor is going to be, it's the first and foremost, that's my job today. Different than as a congressman representing Oregon. But you are correct. The direction of the president when he nominated me and now as a Secretary of Labor is to work with all sides of the aisle and work with labor and business to come together to how we're going to best protect the American worker. So that being said, on the OSHA and or MSHA, the safety of the American worker also is first and foremost, not only under their agencies, but no worker should expect to go to work and not come home safe and sound. It is going to be my goal under those that no cuts are going to be directed, that have to statutorily, when we're out visiting the sites, that we have our investigators on site because we want to protect the American worker. So that will be my focus. And I will continue down that road. As we streamline and modernize, oftentimes it does get conflated, and it's hard to understand that you would make a cut, then you can't do the job. I don't agree with that always. More money doesn't always mean the best outcome, but we are going to do everything we can to fulfill the mandate of the Department of Labor and not let any American worker down, and we will keep them safe.
And again, I just really want to stress around OSHA, especially, and wage and hour division,
OSHA,
those two.
And wage and hour, again, when you're talking about protecting minimum wage, we're talking overtime pay, that people
Wage
get.
theft, all the stuff
wage-
that's
all
out there.
those things that the American worker deserves will be first and focused on my department and my agency to focus on.
Yeah, I know you as the member of Congress would be doing that. I hope you as the secretary can still do that.
Absolutely.
And help influence if there are, in case another billionaire comes into the administration to start playing with things, your expertise would be much appreciated in that area. One of the other questions was, it's because of the cuts, the Job Corps program, I guess it's come up from a couple folks. I come from the perspective, I think, where maybe Mr. Fleischman was coming as well, like it's an important program, right? Because it does have that pipeline.
That's right.
I'm hoping that with the Make America Skilled Again initiative, how will that program make up for the job training resources that we provide to our youth and seniors in the soon-to-be eliminated DOL programs, and what can we expect? Can you assure us that these organizations will have access to the same skilled candidate pool if Job Corps is dismantled?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I was just visiting with the carpenters, and, there were Job Corps students in their trade skills program, in their apprenticeship program. So my goal on the apprenticeship of the 1 million apprentices, along with the president, is to first and foremost focus that pipeline, because that's the market-driven economy that we've been seeing and asking for. And if Job Corps is not working, if it's not serving that population that we're promising to serve, then I want to make sure we serve that population through a different avenue. What that looks like, I'm not exactly sure at this moment, because there's been no decisions made. But there are approximately 20,000 students that we're serving. I need to know that they are in a place that they can have the skills that they need, along with the rest of America. And so making America skilled again, that block grant, we want to focus on all populations to make sure men and women are being served, and that is going to include that same population.
And hopefully we
Job
keep
Corps.
the same focus on registered apprenticeships too, as being the, platinum standard sort of out there. I spent 35 years as a signed contractor with IUPAT.
Sure.
I'm a union member. I myself was a member as well during all that time period. And, those programs really are in many ways heads and tails above other type programs out there. I know you know that from your experience. So just if we can keep that focus as well. Last thing, I think, because I only have 22 seconds, I want to ask the question, but I just raised the concern that when the president signed an executive order taking away bargaining rights from 75% of the federal workforce, it reminded me of what Scott Walker did in my state in Wisconsin, and that caused all sorts of problems that we're still dealing with well over a decade later. I believe those workers have collective bargaining rights. I believe that you believe that, but I hope that we can do more in this area, because I'm concerned that already watching the cuts from Elon Musk, the Doge Commission, this is just one more attack on workers, and at some point we do need people to work for the federal government. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Mr. Moore from West Virginia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Madam Secretary, for being here. The union labor in my district is very thrilled to have you. All the workers in West Virginia are thrilled to have you in this position, so thank you. Just by background, I would mention, since we're talking about trade school, myself, I went to trade school. I actually used to be a welder. That's how I started off my career. Come from a multi-generational family of labor union membership, and it provided my family a very good life, and we owe a lot to that. To that end, I wanted to highlight something for you, and that is this program when I was state treasurer of West Virginia that I started that I'd like to work on with your office, and I'm going to introduce legislation on. It's called the Jump Start Savings Program. So one of the things I noticed when I was working in labor myself is that when you'd graduate from one of these apprenticeship programs or trade school, sometimes the barrier of entry into the workforce was not so much paying for the school. Obviously union apprenticeship is structurally different than that. But when you were coming out, it was difficult to get going, where you had to buy the tools or equipment necessary, licenses, certifications, or new business startup costs to really get going. So we started this program called Jump Start, which was endorsed in the West Virginia legislature and passed in the legislature, but endorsed by our trade unions as well as the Chamber of Commerce. Not too often those two come together on something. And what the program does, it allows individuals to start a savings account that looks like a 529 but functions different, and it's for after graduation. and it allows individuals to save money for tools, equipment, licenses, certifications, and new business startup costs, and the accounts stay open in perpetuity. Now, one of the structural issues that we had, because it was a state-level program, we had tax incentives on it where you could write off up to $25,000 a year, money that went into the account, or as you pulled money out, up to $25,000. So it was a tax-advantaged account. 529, the college savings plan, obviously, you're not paying the capital gains tax, and that's a federal issue, right? We were able to waive it at the state level, but not at the federal level. This is a program that I think that would be really beneficial to the workers of this country when they're coming out of a trade school, coming out of a union apprenticeship program, looking to start a new business, because we're always thinking about trade school and apprenticeship programs, and those are great, and we need more of them. We absolutely need more of them. Just in my district alone, where we have Northern Community College, the welders there, it's hard to keep them long enough to graduate because they're getting jobs so fast. So that's the struggle, is that so many of them are so employable. They're going out and working immediately. But is this something that you think your office would be willing to work with my office in trying to get a piece of legislation together and pass here in Congress?
Oh, absolutely. There's nothing more than an agency, we used to work with agencies as a member of Congress to assist in any of the technical assistance that you need to get that done. And as you work through Congress, I would look forward to working with you on this issue and get it across the line if that's something Congress wants to focus on. Absolutely.
Well, I hope they will, and I'd look to the other side of the aisle. Maybe perhaps some of them might be interested in supporting this. It passed bipartisanly in the West Virginia State Legislature, and I'll give you one example, like auto mechanics is a great one. They have to buy all of their own tools when they come out of school, and it's tens of thousands of dollars. And if they don't have the ability to save to be able to buy those tools, it's a real barrier to entry into the workforce. And that's just one great example. I'll end with this, is that in terms of protecting the workers out there, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the tragedy that happened in northern West Virginia under the last administration. We were not able to get tariff relief on tin plate steel in this country. President Biden refused to put tariffs on tin plate steel. We had to idle a steel plant in Weirton, West Virginia that cost us over 3,000 United Steelworker jobs, and nobody did anything about it. The Biden administration was supposed to be the most pro-union administration in history, left them in the dark. I mean, it's a tragedy. They got sold out for whatever reason by Beijing Biden, and they all lost their jobs. And that plant is idled. We used to have 2 blast furnaces in the United States that made tin plate steel. We're now down to 1 left. So thank you for your work that you're doing with USTR. And if you want to support workers, I would support tariffs. If on the other side of the aisle you want to support workers, support tariffs on steel and aluminum, because that's a way that we're going to protect those jobs. I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Frankel.
Thank you, sir. Good morning. Thank you. Welcome. Congratulations on your new appointment. I just want to start off by saying it's astonishing that President Trump is, while blatantly disregarding the priorities set forth by Congress in our appropriations bill, is still sending cabinet secretaries to request funding. But with that said, all across the country, working people have long relied on the U.S. Department of Labor to safeguard their paychecks, their safety, and their dignity, and they expect the government to stand with them, not sell them out. But under Donald Trump, with Elon Musk wielding his chainsaw through the lives of dedicated public servants and hardworking Americans through his DOGE efficiency group, we're witnessing the deliberate dismantling of one of the most critical lifelines for the American workers, and that's the Department of Labor. And especially egregious at this very moment, the Trump administration, through your department, is orchestrating targeted attacks on the fundamental right to fair treatment in the workplace with the ridiculous excuse that diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives are woke, whatever that even means, no clue. And the damage is profound. And it is more evident in the gutting of the Office of the Federal Contract Compliance Programs. That's a lot of words, OFCCP. The federal government pays private contractors over $600 billion, and 20% of our workforce is employed by these companies. That's more than 33 million workers. And for 60 years, the OFCCP has ensured that these companies don't violate federal law protecting discrimination based on race, sex, sexual orientation, national origin, as well as certain veterans and people with disabilities. So that means a company can't say, I'm not going to hire you because you're black or you're gay or you're a Jew or you're Asian. And public companies were required, when they receive this public money, the private companies, to auditing for compliance with anti-discrimination law. And as a result, the OFCCP collected owed wages for workers who had been discriminated against or faced illegal pay disparities and directed non-compliant companies to implement correct plans. They collected over $260 million just in the last 10 years. But then more important, they sent a message: obey the law. With one stroke of the pen, Donald Trump ordered OFCCP to cease its essential functions, and also now it's threatening the nonprofits, the businesses, with investigations if they are investing in fairness and inclusion. Sends a message to companies: you're receiving federal money, go ahead, discriminate, we have your back. So I have a question. In the past several years, under Biden, Lincoln was compelled to pay $1.8 million to over 600 women for discriminatory pay practices. Google paid $3.8 million to more than 5,500 women and Asian applicants due to hiring and pay discrimination. Cisco Systems agreed to $4.75 million settlement after the audit revealed that women, Black, and Latino employees were paid less than their white male counterparts in similar roles. Intel Corporation settled for $5 million following allegations of systematic pay discrimination against female African American and Hispanic employees, and Bank of America was ordered to pay $2.2 million to over 1,000 Black applicants for discriminatory hiring practices, and I could give you many more examples. These were systematic violations that were uncovered through OFCCP, their audits, and their proactive enforcement. My question to you today: isn't it not true that your department could not do that today?
That is not true. We are ensuring that OFCCP
But
fulfills its statutory requirements, and no discrimination will be tolerated under this nation's laws. That I will fully enforce. I'm not familiar with all those individual cases that you mentioned. I know that you're trying to lay out a plan, but I'm telling you, under the Department of Labor, we will fulfill our statutory requirements under the OFCCP.
What I suggest is that, and with all due respect, because you didn't sign this executive order, but I suggest you read that executive order, because that executive order would not allow the Department of Labor to take any of these actions against any of these companies. And just to sum it up, under Donald Trump, the Department of Labor, I should say the Department of Unlawfulness, no longer protects workers from civil rights violations. It's now, in my opinion, in the business of aiding and abetting discrimination by businesses that receive federal dollars, and that's over $600 billion of taxpayer monies. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you, Congressman.
The chair now recognizes Representative Bice.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to Secretary Chavez-Dreamer for being with us this morning. And thank you for speaking with me recently about my initiative of filing legislation on paid family leave that I introduced. I am excited to be part of the bipartisan paid family leave working group, where we spent a year and a half talking to stakeholders and crafting legislation to address the lack of paid family leave options in what I believe is a responsible way. The More Paid Leave for More Americans Act, H.R. 3089, will provide a modest incentive for states to establish their own family leave programs using a public-private partnership model. And to be clear, this bill is not a mandate. It is an incentive that recognizes that states are already leading the way in many spaces, and we want to support that. And there is a tie-in certainly with the Department of Labor, potentially having an oversight of this particular program. So thank you for giving me some time to talk to you about that. Secretary, Oklahoma, like 26 other states, is a right-to-work state, and President Biden issued an executive order 14063 in 2022 requiring the use of project labor agreements on all federal construction projects over $35 million. This actually limits competition for the projects and results in many projects bringing in crews from out of state. Earlier this year, the Federal Court of Federal Claims ruled that the collective bargaining agreement requirement violated the Competition and Contracting Act by excluding responsible offers that are capable of performing the contract. I am working on legislation to ensure that no further PLA agreements are placed on federal contracts in the future. With only 11% of the workforce unionized, will you continue to support a free market and ensure fair competition across the workplace?
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to go back just quickly on the legislation, and the Department of Labor, again, as was mentioned, will provide any technical assistance that we can offer as you move legislation through Congress, anything that we can do to help out on that, because you're right, as an oversight, if it was to come to fruition, it would be through the Department of Labor. So thank you, because we understand, that is a growing concern amongst a lot of our working.
That's
A
right.
lot of our working families.
The U.S. is one of 7 developed nations in the world that does not have a structured paid family leave program. And so my colleagues and I, bipartisan and bicameral, actually are looking to try to solve that, and we look forward to working with your department.
Great, and thank you. And then again, on right to work, as was mentioned in my hearing and mentioned here today, it's a fundamental tenet of labor law that states have a right to choose if they want to be a right to work state or if they want to unionize. And again, from the Secretary's office, that's left up, to those states. Now on this, the specific PLA that you're talking about was not really a Department of Labor law, but we want to work with every state in order to understand that we want to grow the workforce. That has been really at the fundamental core of President Trump's agenda, is to grow this economy and not get out of our own way, so to speak. And so from the Secretary's office, we want to make sure that we're supporting growing that workforce in any way that we can.
Well, speaking of the workforce, in April, the jobs report beat expectations by 40,000 jobs, showing that President Trump has strengthened the private sector and is growing Main Street America. Can you describe your work on removing some of the burdensome regulations that have allowed wages to grow and how the committee can partner with you to keep the momentum going?
Yeah, thank you. And again, I would like to go back even 1 month prior to that. And we did blow it out of the water, and I think that that's what's important to answering the call of the market and what's happening. 228,000 jobs in one, and then 177,000 jobs, and those are above expectations. And I would imagine we will continue down that road and growing this workforce because of the flexibility and modernization of labor law. And I think that that's been key for not only my agency, but with our business and our labor, wherever they are in the continuum, that we will continue to reduce those barriers so we can grow the American workforce first and stay focused on the American worker. And every conversation that I had with each and every one of you will always come from the pinnacle of the American worker first.
Very much appreciate that. That's an important aspect of the tenet of small business, but also of your organization. So we appreciate your time and dedication to the country. Thank you for your service. And with that, Madam Chair, I yield.
Thank you.
The chair recognizes Representative Watson Coleman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and a welcome to you, Madam
Thank you.
Secretary. A question regarding a study that you all referred to, as I think as related to the decisions that you made with Job Corps. Whose study was that?
Yeah, so that was a Job Corps transparency report. Really, it's the most comprehensive report that has been done out of the Department of Labor in order to discover what has actually been happening.
So that's your study,
Came
your
out of the Department of
okay.
Labor, yep.
I'm
And it's the
I'm
first
very
time that it's been
concerned.
done.
I'm very concerned about Job Corps because I know Job Corps deals with individuals from 16 to 24. It provides them not only opportunity to get an education in a college, but also hooks them up with unions for apprenticeships for things that are very important and responsive to the market, but also provides them residential removal from very dangerous areas. It gives them a new lease on life
Yes.
They are a mixture of people, predominantly minority, all low income. And I'm wondering, what is it that we're proposing to do that is better than that? Because I don't agree that Job Corps has done its job as best it can. What I do think is that we don't necessarily hold people up to the standards that we expect. And so I would like to know as quickly as possible, because I have one other area
Okay.
to question, what is your proposal to deal with that population specifically to give them safety and security in where they're living, opportunities to go to college, opportunities to engage in apprenticeships?
Sure. So working with our respective state partners as well to understand it's very different in every state and very different in every congressional district as well. And so I did pull up these numbers because I knew this would be so important to many of you here. And I know, Congresswoman, that I don't believe you have a Job Corps in your actual district, but in
Next
your
to
sta-
it.
Next to it, I believe. Yeah, very close. But the cost per enrollee there is $56,000, and the cost per graduate for yours is $268,000 per graduate. And only 1/3 of those students are graduating across the board, not yours, but across the board. And students go on to make about $16,000 a year. So just the discrepancy alone concerns me, but that doesn't mean the population we should forget about.
So that's why that's really important to follow through.
That's right.
Number one, how they're employed is another function of how this country deals with minorities in particular.
Yes.
And so it
through the
befuddles me,
apprenticeship
ma'am.
program,
If-
whatever
yeah.
I can do to work with you. I know
Thank
we
you.
didn't have a chance to talk.
I'm gonna be working with you, and I'm sorry I missed your call.
No, that's okay.
It befuddles me why we don't understand the significance of affirmative action and contract compliance. They both came into existence because there was verified studies of the underutilization and the lack of opportunity for women and minorities, and that they were treated discriminatorily in both the contract world as an MBE or WBE or even just an employee, as well as in the work world. And it seems to me that the president is hell-bent on eliminating that opportunity to create equity among people in this country who've been treated discriminatorily.
Well, absolutely not. We won't discriminate against any of our American
Well,
workers.
we are,
and
we
will
are,
fulfill
and I appreciate
obligation.
I appreciate your rhetoric, but I'm watching what he's saying and what he's doing.
Well,
And so I think that it's really important that we collectively recognize that we have an obligation to everybody.
That's right. We'll uplift all American
I have one other
workers.
question regarding these Job Corps. They are private-public partnerships. So in each state or wherever they exist, is it a different private entity that's in relationship with the government, or is it one big,
The operators are
private?
different.
Pardon?
Operators can be different.
Are they primarily, is there any one that's really owning the majority of them?
Across the board, there has been, across the board, and in this report, I think you'll get that information of exactly what's happening. But I would like my team to be able to update you in more detail so that you do fully understand
I
it.
really appreciate it. And you know, the last, I would like to see the study. I would like to have
get it to
conversations
your
with you.
office.
And I would also like to understand, what is the justification for eliminating the program that provided jobs of whatever nature to older people who were low income and needed that additional income? I just feel like we're punishing older people who need to work.
Well, my goal is certainly not that, but because those are subject again to litigation on the grant funding, I won't be able to specifically talk about that right at this moment, but I would
Can
love
you
to
talk to
continue
me
to work
about
with
how
your
you're going to
office.
protect them, even irrespective of any kind of lawsuit against your eliminating this particular program? What is your vision to protect those individuals of that ilk, that age group, who need to work?
Sure.
How,
the
do-
mission-
how are you plan to
We
ensure
will
that?
fulfill the mission of the Department of Labor, and as the Secretary of Labor, I will focus on all the American workers, wherever they are in their continuum of the workforce. And that is the job of the Department of Labor, and we'll continue on that road. That I can guarantee.
Thank you, ma'am. I yield back.
The chair recognizes Representative Molinar.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Secretary
Nice to see
Chavez
you.
DeRemer. Nice to see you. Welcome back.
Thank you.
And appreciate you being here with us
Sure,
today.
glad to be here.
And I've appreciated our conversations over the years, and you represented a state that has a lot of agricultural activity, and understand, I know based on your time in Congress, you were involved in the workforce issues and agriculture, and I want to follow up on some of the discussion you've already had on the H-2A AWR situation in Michigan. Have you been to Michigan before?
Oh, sir, I used to live in Michigan.
Well, we need you to come
I
back.
used to live in Ann Arbor, and my daughter lives in Saginaw now, so I
Okay.
was just there visiting
Well-
my grandson, so yeah.
Well, we want you to come back, and
Glad to
we'd
do it.
love to have you meet with some of our farmers. Some are fifth, sixth generation fruit growers, vegetable growers, who are really under tremendous financial stress right now. And it's because of a federal mandate that increases the cost of labor for them, the H-2A. And so in Michigan, you have these farmers where they're paying transportation for their workers, they're paying housing, and then they're also forced to pay over $18 an hour. And they just can't make it anymore. And so there's an urgency. It's a huge importance. I know, based on your willingness to work on this, and I appreciate that, and I know the chairman talked with you about it. What I would propose is working with Secretary Rollins. We brought this up the other day in the Agricultural Subcommittee, and she pledged to work on this as well. And I think the two of you and your teams working together, I know we've already done some calls on this, could really help resolve this. And I know there's a process that needs to take place, but there's also an urgency. So I've introduced legislation similar to what Representative Clyde mentioned, pausing the increase for 2 years, just to give some relief as we work on a longer-term solution. And I know, some of the litigation issues, and you don't necessarily want to comment one way or another, but I would welcome your technical input on that legislation, and would welcome being part of any work group that could be established to help resolve this, both on a short-term basis as well as a long-term basis.
Absolutely. And so any technical assistance that we can give you through the Department of Labor, ETA, and specifically, I'm glad to do it as you follow through with any legislation that Congress is working toward. As in regards to Secretary Rollins, we visit often in regards to how the workforce and agriculture really collide all the time. And then working with Secretary Noem as well on just the H programs. One of the things that I heard as a member of Congress and in working with a lot of you was the dedication on just the systems in play themselves. And sometimes navigating that for our farmers and ranchers has been quite difficult. And so we're working on that through the Department of Labor, and I've directed my team to make sure that there is a dedicated focus to either members of Congress and or respective states who need to say, I just need some help navigating this, because time is money. We understand that. We understand the workforce matters. And so we're working hard in that process, and I'll continue to do so. Really at the direction of the president, that we have seen that all secretaries to work together to understand what's happening. And then the workforce, that pipeline is much needed oftentimes, and is so different in every state.
Thank you, and I also just wanted to follow up, being familiar with Michigan as you are, Mackinac Island is a very
yes,
special place.
been there.
And, one of the things a lot of people don't realize is the H-2B visa is very much in use there. Because of the process where there's a cap on that, and sometimes there's a lottery where people don't know if they're going to get, the H-2B workers that they need, they're in a situation where they don't know if they can open their business. And so it actually costs American jobs, because businesses that employ H-2B workers as well as local area workers don't have that certainty. And it would be an issue of working with Secretary Noem and yourself, and we would welcome your help lifting that cap, or at least providing the certainty so that more people can get the workers they need on Mackinac Island.
No, thank you for bringing that up. It's important, and I'll continue to work with the other secretaries as it takes all different agencies to determine this, and streamlining that and working together is going to be key, and we'll continue down that road so that it's more efficient for the people who are using the programs themselves.
Can I ask one last quick question? I've been meeting, in Michigan, we have 83 counties. A lot of the counties have county fairs. They have, the carnival rides
Sure.
and the workforce they need for that. That's another area where I would ask you to consider what options might be available, because that's so important to the rural communities.
We want to grow all the workforce that's needed here to supplement and supply our American workers and our American businesses. So I will. And if you can, at that fair, have some Mackinac Island fudge ice cream, I'd
All right.
appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Of course.
I yield back.
The chair recognizes Representative Dean.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ranking Member. Secretary Chavez de Remer, thank you for being here today, for your testimony, and for our conversation within the last week. I appreciate that. And Madam Chair and Madam Ranking Member, I know I'm new to this committee, but I have to tell you there's something a little jarring about what's going on. I think we are here in appropriations hearings. Am I correct? And nowhere in your testimony are you revealing what the president is actually seeking, which is a $4.7 billion reduction to the Department of Labor. These are appropriations hearings. We should be hearing about the dollars. Your words are at complete odds. Your value of labor and of workers are at complete odds with the deep cuts that are proposed in the president's budget. And I'm puzzled that you wouldn't have written about it in your written testimony or testified to it today. You want to protect workers. You want to grow jobs. You just said that, Mackinac Island and everywhere else. You want to grow jobs. How do we do that with a $4.7 billion cut to the Department of Labor, 36% from 25 enacted levels? So I'm concerned about these cuts. I'm concerned what impact they'll have on workers across the nation. Labor is the backbone of this country. It is the backbone of this economy, an economy that we want to go positively as opposed to what is going on right now. These budget cuts will affect critical programs that support American workers, such as job training, unemployment benefits, workplace safety, and other vital labor protections. Workers are facing shifting job markets, and they have a lot on the line. And we have an obligation to fully understand how these proposed reductions that your president, our president, your boss, is putting forward. I was mindful of our new Pope, who will be installed this weekend, Pope Leo XIV, who selected his papal name after Pope Leo XIII, who prized and was really sort of the godfather of social justice, Christian Catholic social teaching, and the rights of working people. It's in that spirit that I hope we can recognize the importance of all workers. And yet, if you take a look at the framing of this administration and labor and workers and read the March 27th executive order by this president stripping federal workers of their collective bargaining rights, as I said, this is in complete juxtaposition to the language that you are using, and you're not talking about the steep cuts. So let's talk about some of them. We know the benefits of workforce development programs. I've seen it directly in the community college in my district with their apprenticeship programs, working directly with the county to provide 1 to 2 year Montgomery County Works apprenticeship programs called MAP for students to gain in-demand skills at no cost. The program partners students with businesses in my area, providing an opportunity for a successful pipeline for employment. These programs are at risk. I'll tell you already, they're cutting. The Montgomery County Commerce Department in my district has already received notice of a 15% cut in annual Workforce Investment Opportunity Act, WIOA funding totaling almost $600,000. This is in conflict, again, with your words. You prize workforce development, and we are already forced, as a result of the actions of this administration, to cut. You talk about cutting waste, fraud, and abuse, and to restore freedom. The president's proposed budget cut would take $1.6 billion from Department of Labor grants and move the remainder to Make America Skilled Again. I guess that's MASA. We'll add that to MAGA. We'll add that to MAHA and AHA. I cannot stand these slogans. I want substance. Let's talk about the substance of cutting $1.6 billion and shifting, and I say shafting, when you send it over to the states in a block grant program. Your argument is, the president's argument is, the states will have greater control. We know that not to be true. You're cutting what the states will get, and they've cut, as I just showed you, at the county level, what we can do. You propose, the budget proposes eliminating WIOA, adult job training, which would deny job training and employment services to more than 300,000 adults who face barriers to finding good-paying jobs, which would rob 135,000 young people of employment opportunities. Do you understand the conflict that we hear from your words and the deep cuts that this administration, they're already starting, and they're proposing for the 2026 budget, which you have not raised whatsoever?
Congresswoman, I know we're out of time, but I just do want to answer, and thank you for the phone call. Thank you for recognizing my values for the American worker. I do appreciate it, and so my words are true. This is a reevaluation of the taxpayer dollars in understanding how we can best dedicate it to the workforce. So while you want to call it cuts, that's up to you. I want to call it a reevaluation, and we want to focus those tax dollars because that's the
$4.7 billion,
America First
that's
agenda
cuts.
that we're putting forward. And I can guarantee you this, I will work my tail off, day in and day out, to protect the American worker, to provide the drop-down menu for the words that I've used in this testimony today, and I will work with you and everybody in this office to do exactly that.
But we're
While
here
we
today.
reevaluate taxpayer dollars that can save the taxpayer dollars and not the waste, fraud, and abuse. That's the goal of the American First agenda. That's the goal of this administration, and I will enact this administration and do both. We can do both.
But
and
in
we're
your role
going to
here
do
today,
both.
you did not describe a single cut. I think that misses what you were supposed to be doing here today.
Thank you.
I yield back.
Thank you.
The chair recognizes myself for 5 minutes. Madam Secretary, it is a delight to have you with us today. I am so grateful that President Trump entrusted you to run the Department of Labor, because somebody with your background and your expertise as a small business owner, everything that you bring to the table is going to be such an asset, not only for the department, but for our country. And so I could not be more thrilled to have you sitting before us today. And I just wanted to share, wherever I go in my district, I hear from young moms and dads about how hard it is to get back into the workforce after a life-altering event, such as having a newborn, which you're very familiar with as a new grandmother. Congratulations. But I've been so honored to be a part of that working group, along with my colleague, Representative Bice. And we put forward the More Paid Leave for More Americans Act, which is truly a public-private partnership to encourage our states to get more moms and dads back into the workforce, because we know, I think we can all agree, that workforce flexibility leads to employee retention, which I know is so important to you and your work and all that you're doing. And I'd like to give one more plug to my home state of Louisiana. We, through the Department of Veterans Affairs, launched what we call the BOOT. It's an initiative to improve the recruiting, employment, and retention of our transitioning service members through partnerships with local businesses and organizations. And together, efforts like expanding paid family leave and supporting veteran workforce initiatives demonstrates how innovative, flexible approaches to employment can strengthen both our labor force and our economy. So I'd like to start by asking you what the Department Labor's plan to ensure those who may have taken a gap in employment, such as our mothers, our dads, and our veterans, how they will have the tools necessary to re-enter and contribute back to the workforce.
Well, thank you, Chairwoman. It's an honor to be before you, and as we serve together on Education and Workforce Committee, we know how valuable the workforce is. So a couple of things. One, thank you for working on the legislation with Congresswoman Bice. Certainly, we want to be, from the Department of Labor's perspective, this is important to grow that workforce. And whatever we can do on the technical assistance, as was once said, glad to do and work with your office as you move legislation forward. That being said, yes, the culmination of my experience, and thank you for recognizing that, I am the daughter of a Teamster. I do understand how important that is for the American workforce. I am a business owner and have created a business over the last 20 years. That also plays into it. I'm a former mayor and understanding what happens on the ground in these respective states, and now former Congresswoman and now Secretary of Labor. Put those together, and I believe that is exactly, and I know that's why the president said you will be best as a secretary to bring all sides to the table and get to good bipartisan legislation for you all. And then how can I enforce those? Through Louisiana, the goal is to grow that workforce. Everything that we can do. As a new grandmother, understanding how key that is, and that set the direction of the president. How are we going to grow this workforce, whether it's through 1 million apprenticeships, the pipelines that we need, respecting and understanding every state is very different than the one-size-fits-all is not always going to work, and we need to listen to the market-driven economy, what they're asking for, and the flexibility and modernization of labor law. That being said, I look forward to working with you and your offices to do just that as we move through the America Really First agenda and streamlining how labor law has been done in the past and still protect what the Department of Labor's mission is, and that is to protect the American worker, the job seeker, as well as the retiree as we move forward.
Awesome. So transitioning over to my background's in higher education, as you know, and I am passionate about training up our next workforce. And I'm very well aware that a 4-year degree is not for every student. We have some amazing fields that our students can go into through the trade schools and community colleges. I have to give a shout out to Louisiana Delta Community College back in my district because they are truly stepping up to meet the workforce demands by producing these programs that are going to do just that. We just announced a new meta data center in my district, and they are actually stepping up to make sure that that workforce is ready to go to fulfill those high-paying jobs. So can you talk a little bit to us about what the Department of Labor is doing to make sure that we are bolstering that workforce and not just focusing on 4-year institutions, but our trade schools and community colleges to make sure that those partnerships exist so that we can produce the next generation of workforce?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Community colleges for far too long have kind of been, left behind in knowing that they are really the conduit between what the community is asking for as well as what we can produce as a skilled workforce. And so upskilling, reskilling, that's the job of the Department of Labor, is to make sure that that pipeline is always running and fulfilled. And, post this last administration and post COVID, we are just now getting up and running, and with under the direction of this president that, I firmly believe he is the president of the American worker because he's focused on all workers across the board. And I'm going to do everything I can to fulfill that. And one of those ways is to upskill, reskill, and fulfill that apprenticeship, 1 million apprenticeships every single year, and we're well on our way.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
The chair now recognizes Representative Harder.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, I've heard you and President Trump repeatedly state, even today, that you support putting the American worker first. That's great, which is why I'm struggling to understand some of the actions by your department recently. Under your leadership, the Department of Labor eliminated funding for several critical worker protections. One of the most alarming decisions was defunding the Wage and Hour Division, the team responsible for enforcing basic child labor laws. You didn't trim this office, you erased them completely. Let's be clear about what that means. This division enforces the laws that protect kids from working dangerous jobs. Laws that say a 7-year-old doesn't belong in a coal mine. These are no-brainer protections for kids. You cut this division knowing that child labor is actually getting worse, not better. In just the last few years, child labor violations have skyrocketed 88% across the United States. In 2023, your own department found 13-year-olds cleaning razor-sharp saws and handling toxic chemicals in a meatpacking plant. It's terrifying stuff. You and Elon Musk labeled this enforcement waste, fraud, and abuse. So, simple yes or no question, do you stand by labeling child labor law enforcement waste, fraud, and abuse?
We did not erase any of the Wage and Hour Division, so I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to there. And as far as
You've eliminated the funding for it.
Not a Wage and Hour Division, we have not. And as far, if you're talking about, child labor is so important to me, and it always has been. We will not tolerate any child labor violations, and we will crack down and actually double down on any practices where there is child labor violations, and we will fulfill the mission of the Department of Labor to do so.
I think the rhetoric that I'm hearing is not at all matched by the budget or the work that we've seen from Elon Musk and Doge that have eliminated funding for enforcement of basic child labor laws. I'd recommend that you take a look at what your department has done over the last couple months, because the reality is the enforcement for child labor has gone down in the name of saving waste, fraud, and abuse. It doesn't feel like waste, fraud, and abuse to actually make sure that our kids are being protected. What does seem like waste, fraud, and abuse is some of the other actions that we've seen happening at your department. For instance, a taxpayer-funded birthday party that you had recently, a bash complete with wine, big screen TVs displaying your face. I imagine the cake was pretty good. Are you planning on investigating that birthday party as waste, fraud, and abuse?
That is fake news. I don't know where you get your information from, but that is fake news.
You didn't have a birthday party?
I did not have a birthday party.
There was no wine or big screen TVs at the Department of Labor?
I am here as an appropriations to talk about appropriations, and you want to talk about fake news.
That is appropriations. That
There
is
was-
dollars from taxpayer-funded accounts going to your birthday party.
Congressman Harder, that is not true statement. I did not have a birthday party. So we had a swearing-in party, an official swearing-in party for me and my deputy secretary.
And that wasn't funded by taxpayer dollars?
It was not a birthday party. It was a swearing-in party, and it was welcoming the Department of Labor, and that's who was there.
Well, are you going to be investigating the folks that actually put that wine and put that cake and those screens on TV in the midst of cutting labor protections for kids?
Well, Congressman Harder, I appreciate that maybe we didn't have the conversation to work together. I do look forward to working with you on the issues of the Department of Labor that matter, and that's the workforce development that I'm here to discuss today at the direction of the President, and work with the entire committee here to move forward to honor what the mission is, and we will fulfill our mission with the proposed, right now is a proposed skinny budget. I cannot speculate on the full budget, but we will deliver on that mission.
Madam Secretary, the hypocrisy that I think I've seen so far from this department is breathtaking. Eliminating protections for vulnerable kids, then using taxpayer money to celebrate yourself. So I hope that we're able to see some change. I'd love a chance to work together, but so far the
We haven't worked
actions
together,
that I've
and
seen
so
are not at all
just-
matched by the rhetoric.
I understand that sometimes this is important to do. I sat on the other side of the dais. I never had the disrespect for my colleagues. This way, I hope to work with you, and we'll build a relationship so that this doesn't go back and forth. Let's talk about the issues at hand. I think that that's important to do. Rather than this attack mode, it doesn't make sense to me. I wouldn't do it to you, and I don't expect that you to do it to me as a secretary, nor as a former colleague.
Well, I wouldn't have a taxpayer-funded birthday party. So thank you, and I yield back.
The chair recognizes Representative Elsey.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Ranking Member. Madam Secretary, it's good to see you again.
Nice to see you too, Congressman.
We were on the same hallway up in Longworth on the 7th floor, and it's good to see you back in an even greater position. You know, I'm going to use a little sarcasm here. You've been on the job for 66 whole days. How do you not know everything already? I'm shocked and I'm saddened that you don't know everything
Appreciate it.
right now.
I'm grateful not to.
66 days. I mean, we interviewed the Secretary of the Navy yesterday. He'd been on the job for 50 days. I want to say, other than him, you might be the most traveled secretary because the President has sent you all across the country to actually do your job. How many days have you been traveling in the last 66?
Oh, gosh. We've been on the road. We've visited 8 states, and I don't know the exact number of days, but I was just back from a 12-day.
Well, that's a lot of travel. You're not spending time in the office,
No.
decorating the office. You're out in the workforce doing your job. And I think that you need accolades for that instead of criticism for it. You were raised, was your dad a single father?
No. My parents were married and are still married. I think they celebrated
Okay.
60 years. But my dad was a Teamster and worked hard day in
And
and
that
day
was
out.
in Hanford, which was where I was stationed, so we have
that's
that in
right.
common. Hanford in the Central Valley of California, where there's a lot of agriculture, and he worked hard to raise you.
That's right.
And I think that our colleagues on the other side need to recognize that you're probably the most well-rounded Secretary of Labor that has been on both sides, has had a difficult upbringing, has had a life in which you had to work, and you are perfectly suited for this job. And I think that everybody should want to work hard with you on this on this venture of making life better for the American worker. The American workforce is facing a growing skills gap in infrastructure critical industries across the nation's economy. The return on investment for a four-year college, as we've discussed, has decreased to the point Americans have been discouraged by the prospect of having to go to school and have too many in loans. For too long, we've emphasized this as the sole path to the middle-class American dream, but I think we're getting away from that now. So community colleges and trade schools provide hands-on specialized training directly relevant to the job market. So it's great to hear from your testimony that almost 83,000 new apprenticeships have been registered. I'm currently working on legislation called the Apprenticeship Infrastructure Tax Credit Act, say that 3 times fast, incentivizing more apprenticeships across the board with an additional focus on recent military and military spouses. The President's goal of creating 1 million new apprenticeship opportunities is noble. So how might a targeted apprenticeship tax credit for employers complement the Department's efforts to expand registered apprenticeships?
Well, certainly we want to remove all barriers, and I think that that's something that we hear across the board from, and so I look forward to hearing what, this type of legislation that you'll work with your colleagues on, because again, we want to grow the workforce. And oftentimes, at least in my past experience, certainly in Department of Education and Labor, oftentimes it was access because of funding. And we see that across the board, whether it's expanded Pell Grants or any of those types of things, anything that we can do to grow that workforce and not make people make a decision where they want to continue or have to stay where they are, but they have options. And so I look forward to offering, again, that technical assistance that you may need in order to work with your colleagues if Congress so chooses to do that bill. I think that would be something that could be definitely beneficial to the workforce as well.
Well, I think that's great because employers, not the federal government, but employers make the biggest investment in apprentices through the payment of wages and paid training. And what policies outside the current grant appropriations is DOL considering supporting?
Well, anything that we can do to assist the public-private partnerships, and how, again, as I meet with either business owners, employees, unions that come into the Department of Labor, the goal is to, how can we get to yes? I mean, for far too long, the government has, we don't want them to be an adversary, we want them to be an ally. How can we assist and how can we help? And at the direction of the President, it is to go out there and get to a yes in growing this workforce and protecting our American workers, and at the same time, fulfilling, again, the mission of the Department of Labor, which is protecting those wage earners, those job seekers, and those retirees as they move through their entire continuum of being in the workforce.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Madam Chair, I yield back.
Thank you. The chair now recognizes Ranking Member DeLauro for closing remarks.
Thank you very, very much. Let me just say one thing about paid leave. You may or may not know this because I have been here for 34 years, 32 on this committee. But in 1997, I introduced the Paid Family and Medical Leave bill. I actually worked for Senator Christopher Dodd, who introduced the first family and medical leave legislation, which took several years to pass, and finally passed by President Clinton. And we knew at the time that we couldn't get paid leave, so I've been on that mission since I arrived in this institution. I lead and author the Family Act. It guarantees 12 weeks of paid leave to all workers. The lack of having a paid leave program costs this economy about $22.5 billion a year. So I hope my colleagues would support that bill and that you can look at it, and I would hope to get your support for workers by supporting the Family Act. Again, introduced in 1997, so I'm not talking about particular administrations. I just think we have to meet the moment and do what's right for American families across the board, and it's particularly helpful for women as well. Let me also make this statement to you, because I do believe you have very much, and you talked about, as I talked about being a daughter of a garment worker, you're the daughter of a teamster. So you have some idea of the history of what the labor movement has meant in the United States. And what it has done, as I said in my remarks, created the middle class in this country. And but if I were you, and I just mean this very, very sincerely, you head up the department that is central to what happens to working men and women in this country. If you can, and I don't know if this is possible for you, but your values with regard to this issue, and quite frankly, the values of others who have proposed a budget, and the disconnect between your values and the budget presented are really stark. And whatever way that you can find, I don't want to invade your space or how you navigate the direction of what you believe and what is occurring. I think you have to come to grips with that. Some of my colleagues here today would, when they smear regulations from labor laws, we need to remember what working conditions were like for U.S. workers before the enactment of our labor laws and the promulgation of the associated regulations and standards when we deal with OSHA or MSHA, and these efforts. And it was the first Secretary of Labor who was a woman, Frances Perkins, who was my role model, you know. She dealt with what happened in regulations after the Triangle Fire. It was massive loss of life, and particularly of women. And I wrote a book in 2011, and the opening graph of that book, and I'm going to read it. It bears repeating that the reasons companies do not feel free to poison us, to sell us spoiled meat, lock our daughters up in ninth-floor sweatshops with no fire escapes, employ our underage sons in coal mines, force us to work 13-hour shifts without overtime or a break, or call in private armies to fire rifles at those of us who dare strike for higher wages, is not because companies experienced a moment of zen and decided to evolve. No, they were forced into greater accountability and social concern by the legitimate actions of a democratic, that's a small d, a democratic government. In other words, if we depend on goodwill, we are all screwed. That is the opening paragraph of my book. You have the enormous responsibility of making sure that workers on the job are safe, in addition to their wages and a whole variety of other things, and to look at those who would want to dismiss regulations, speak about whatever kind of a market that they want, would allow us to go back to an era when workers, men and women, were abused in the workforce. And I don't believe that you want to do that. I also was very concerned when we were talking here today about you're in charge. But Elon Musk announced the deferred resignation program that has gutted your staff. But you won't share data on the impacts of the response to our letters or to our questions at this hearing. So I have to wonder, is Elon Musk in charge? Should we ask him the questions? Are the questions best directed to him? Or are you, the Secretary of Labor, in charge of the Department of Labor's staff? We did get a response. We wrote to you 2 months ago, the first, and I mentioned this to you over the phone. We wrote 2 months ago to you, myself, Senator Murray, Senator Baldwin, Congressman Scott, Senator Sanders, expressing concerns about the staffing reductions and office closures. We got a letter yesterday, a one-page letter, no information about the number of employees that have been fired, placed on administrative leave, or who took early retirement options. My colleague, Mr. Hoyer, asked about this, but you have to provide to this committee, and I hope you will commit to do this. You have to commit to doing this. A list of the programs the Department of Labor whose funding has been cut, frozen since January 20th, along with what was the criteria for gutting or freezing those funds. I'm all for cutting. I cut Job Corps programs in the past that were not working. Give us the criteria on which these programs were cut. We may agree with you, but we have a dialogue, agree or disagree on what's happened. We have no information. We're just told that there was a $2 trillion goal that had to be met for saving, and therefore, let's cut. without any thought about consequences of any of these cuts. You need to provide the committee with a number of employees at department by agency who received a reduction in force notification. And will you provide this committee the number of probationary employees by agency whose employment at the department was terminated? You have to provide the committee the number of employees at the department by agency who accepted early retirement offers. And we need to do that as quickly as possible if we are to address the appropriations for this department moving forward. Let me also mention to you the cuts in, we've talked about training programs, upskilling, workforce. Yes, and I told you about registered apprenticeships. I've been fighting for that for years, and I don't want unregistered apprenticeships. I think it's a boondoggle, and it's BS. It's registered, so we know what's happening, and that people have a job at the end of the line. But the 2026 budget proposal slashes job training programs by $3.6 billion. That's a 35% cut. That's opportunities for American workers. The president is asking to cut these funds while he administers disastrous policies that increase the cost of living for the middle class. We talked about WIOA. We appropriated 2025, and understand that 2025, the numbers are based on 2024. That's the budget. That's what, I didn't vote for it, but everyone on the other side of the aisle voted for a continuing resolution that said, let's continue the 2024 budget. And in that 2024 budget for 2025, the Congress appropriated $2.9 billion for WIOA grants to states and for job training programs. It's a violation of the law and of the Constitution to steal the appropriated funds from this committee or any other committee and move the dollars wherever you want to. No, it's against the law. And let me just say, and you don't have to answer these questions now, but I'm going to submit it. Are you planning to freeze and withhold congressionally appropriated funding for WIOA job state grants? Do you commit to following the law and fully obligating funding that Congress appropriated for WIOA job training state grants in fiscal year 2025? How many fewer participants would be served as a result of these proposed cuts? How would that impact the hiring needs of employers looking for skilled workers? Is there a role for publicly funded workforce development programs, or is your goal to only have workforce training by private companies? These are questions that we need to have answered. And I just say to you that, I'm sorry, OSHA closings. Offices closed. Louisiana, the only office in Louisiana for OSHA is closed. The only office in Oklahoma closed. In Arkansas, most of the office is in Illinois, over half in Georgia, the Florida Panhandle, the Great Lakes region. MSHA, deeper cuts. You restrict inspector travel. It's been pointed out with regard the mining incidences in the first 4 months of 2025, but that staff has been cut and offices closed. I do believe you fundamentally, believe in workers' rights and safe workplaces, but I think you're in an environment where there may be others who don't share those values, and they're demonstrating it by the presentation of their budget. And we've heard about these cuts, not from you. You retweeted the from Doge, what the cuts. iLab, Wanto, those grants cancellation were announced by Musk's Doge account and retreated, and you retreated that news. Madam Secretary, the American worker is relying on you and relying on us to make sure that we don't gut the worker programs that people have lived and died for in this country, and to move forward. It is an awesome responsibility. I wanted to be, and I was interviewed for the position of Secretary of Labor in the Obama administration. And when he asked me what I wanted to do, I said I wanted to be Frances Perkins. I want to protect the rights of American workers, men and women. Protect children. Guard against forced labor. Make sure our trade agreements are worker-centered. I believe you have those concerns as well and care about those. Do what you need to do in standing up for American workers. We have to have answers before we can make a determination of what it is that we are going to provide for this incredibly important agency. Thank you for your testimony, and I look forward truly to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Congresswoman.
Thank you, Madam Secretary, for being with us today. This hearing is officially adjourned.
Great, thank you.